is really good. So just real quick, I'm just going to go through this. The buyer is buying the property and will own it. And so that's the first thing that they need to understand. The seller needs to understand that I am the buyer and I'm buying this property. I will own the property. And I intend, obviously, to make a profit on it. I'm buying it subject to the existing financing. That financing is always going to stay in place, and it could potentially stay in place for the life of the loan. So make sure that they understand that. And here's the catch, number 4. So number 1 is the buyer is buying it and they'll own it. And number 4 is the mortgage is going to stay in the seller's name. And so if I own the house, you own the mortgage, potentially for the life of the mortgage. And that alone confuses people. And so that right there, you have to really make sure you hammer that point home, make sure that they understand that. And we're going to get into all this stuff in detail, but the mortgage on this property, all mortgages now, unless it's just a private mortgage with a private individual and they just didn't put it in there for some reason, any mortgage with a bank is going to have a due on sale clause, and we're going to talk about that specifically. Anytime you sell a piece of property, that due on sale clause is triggered, which means the entire note is going to be called due if the bank finds out. So there are some things that we're going to do to where the bank won't find out. The buyer intends to make all the payments. The buyer is not representing himself or herself as a debt relief agent. The buyer has not charged any fees to the seller for buying this property. The buyer is not offered to rent or sell the house back to the seller. That's an important thing because that's real estate commission type of stuff. And then this is, number 10 is very, very important. This is why you have to actually record this stuff. That's why it's a sale. And it has to be recorded at the courthouse as if it is a sale, okay? The seller cannot, if you guys do a transaction like this, the seller cannot go and further encumber this property. They can't draw money against it. They can't do anything like this, like going and getting a second mortgage, getting home equity line of credit, something like that.
How would you know that?
Well, if you actually record the deed at the courthouse, they cannot legally do it because they don't own the house anymore.
But the mortgage company doesn't know.
They're going to end up triggering the due on sale clause. They'll do a title search. They're going to end up triggering that due on sale clause. Who's going to get hurt if that due on sale clause gets triggered? You or the seller?
That's depending on how much money you put down.
Well, hold on. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to your scenario in a second. That might be true, but for the most part, it's going to hurt them, not you, because the whole note's going to be called due, and they're going to have to pay it. Because remember, the mortgage is in their name; it's not in your name. So that's some important stuff to remember. And then there's just kind of some legalese at the bottom. So hang on to this. Email me. I don't have any problem doing this for every one of you guys. Email me, info@alaria.com, and I'll send you the PowerPoint, and I'll send you the Word version of this so you guys can go and edit it, put your name in there and all that stuff. So, cool? Ready to get started?
One quick question.
Sure.
I'm a realtor. I know I have to disclose, and disclose.
Yep.
She's not. If she does this, does she still have to disclose that her husband's will?
That's a question for the commission. Keith, do you know the answer to that?
No.
I don't know, but I would anyway. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm just.
But then
It's in.
the buyer is married to a real estate.
I
Yeah,
would just to
okay,
see
you're
why just you got to cover your butt.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem. I've never had a seller say to me, "Oh, you're a realtor? Oh no, I'm not doing this." I've never had that happen.
So, how many subject twos have you done?
Only one, and I'm going to talk about it in detail. I've only done one. I've tried to do many, and a lot of times when I give them this form, they're like, "Whoa, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize this." This is for the person who is in a bind, owes about what it's worth. We're going to get into all that. This is just it's just a particular situation. It's just an extra option to offer somebody. I've only successfully done this once, but I've offered it many times. All right. So buying out subject to. What is subject to? We kind of went over it just a little bit. But the bank financing is already in place, and you're just kind of piggybacking off of that financing. That financing is going to stay in place potentially for the life of the loan. You own the house, okay? The seller is gonna own that mortgage for potentially the life of the mortgage, unless you go and refinance it out, or unless you go ahead and pay it off, or you can sell the house actually. Unless you do any of those things, the seller is gonna own that mortgage for unless you have some sort of other agreement in place where you're only gonna do this for a few years. That's just kind of the way that it goes. So does the bank allow this kind of transaction?
Yeah.
Nope.
Not a thing to help it.
The bank does not allow this to happen, okay? There used to be assumable loans. Assumable loans are pretty much gone. Almost all residential loans for single family residents are gone. I actually did assume a loan, but it was an old VA mortgage from like the early 90s. And I don't know of there are no new loans being written today that are assumable. But there are some commercial loans that are assumable, but single family residences, there aren't any out there. So there's a due on sale clause. Rich, I could have just like given you this and we could have called it a day. I didn't realize that I did this PowerPoint without even consulting this. The due on sale, every mortgage nowadays has a due on sale clause. As soon as the property is sold, it's gonna get triggered and the bank is gonna see it, and they don't have to, it's up to them, it's up to any lender. They can call the entire note due if they want to. So how do you get around this clause? And again, I'm not an attorney. I definitely recommend that you consult an attorney when doing this strategy, but you gotta use a land trust. It's the only way to do this type of transaction is to go through a land trust. Okay? So here's what that means. This is what's gonna happen. And well, just really quickly about a land trust. Land trusts, just make sure you guys understand from an asset protection standpoint, land trusts are 100% worthless. So that's kind of some confusion that's out there right now. Land trusts do not offer any kind of asset protection in the sense like an LLC. An LLC provides a barrier between you and the property, right? Because the LLC owns it. Land trust does not own property. Okay, land trust. I guess that's not necessarily the case. Anyway, it just doesn't act as a barrier. Like a judge is not going to say that this is like a line of defense. It's going to go straight to you. Okay. So what's a land trust? Okay. Federal law says any owner of property, so anyone can transfer any piece of property that you own into a land trust without triggering that clause. So if the bank sees that all of a sudden I sold a piece of property, and there's a mortgage on it, I sold that piece of property to a land trust, they legally cannot do anything about it. So there's a federal law in place from I think the 70s, I didn't put it in here. There's a federal law in place that says you can put any property into a land trust. The only good ways I know of, the only ways I use a land trust, the only way I would recommend using a land trust is for a subject to transaction or for some anonymity. I use every single one of my properties are in a land trust, every one of them are, and it's really only for anonymity purposes. So when you go and you look up any property I own in the courthouse records, the owner of that property is going to be whatever the address is, land trust, and I use a P.O. box.
Does that include the partial investments?
Correct. Oh yeah. And so if there's a mortgage on the property, and you put that property in a land trust, only for anonymity purposes, it doesn't work because there's a mortgage attached to it. And they can look at the mortgage and they can see exactly who the mortgage is next to. The only time this really works for anonymity purposes is if you pay cash for the house and you buy it in the name of the land trust right off the bat. Then no one knows who owns it.
Question. Will it protect your personal property from lawsuits?
Nope, it's not an asset protection vehicle.
Okay, all right.
Only an LLC.
It's something I've been trying to learn more about.
It's anonymity only. Okay. But, and it's kind of a little bit of a catch-22, if say there is a lawsuit, you're going to put your P.O. box on there, so hopefully you'll get the mail. But if there's a lawsuit, they're going to sue the trust, which people can do.
Okay.
If you don't have like a good address on there, you're never going to know that the lawsuit exists, and you might think, oh well, if I don't know the lawsuit exists, then I don't care. Wrong. What that means is you're going to lose because you're not going to show up and you don't know when it is, and you automatically lost that lawsuit. So it's not a vehicle for asset protection at all. So the owner of the land trust is the trustee. And that trustee can be your personal name or it can be an LLC. I recommend it be an LLC if you're doing this for business purposes, which you probably would be. Okay. So the title is going to change hands from whoever's name that is that's on the mortgage. Whoever the name of it was in is now in the name of an LLC, or it's actually in the name of a land trust. And it's not going to alarm the lender if they may not even find that out. But if they find that out, it won't. They might raise an eyebrow, but there's nothing they can do. I've talked to lenders, and by the way, if you go to get a mortgage on a property in the name of a trust, they don't like you to do that. They want it to be in the name of the LLC, and then they want that to be guaranteed by your personal name. So there goes the anonymity. So there's no reason. If you're getting a mortgage on a property and you want to use a land trust, there's really no reason for it at all, because people can still find out who owns it.
So that's the only advantage a land trust has, is just, you can't see a name. You can't see.
Correct.
That's it.
Because here's what happens. If you put it in the name of a land trust, all those documents that say name who the trustee is, it names who the beneficiary is, it names all that stuff, it names the terms of the trust, all that is not recorded. That just stays in your filing cabinet. Well, the only thing that's recorded is the deed with the name of the new owner, and the owner is the trustee, or the owner's the land trust.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know who the trustee is, they don't know any of that. They don't have access to that because it's not recorded.
So why do you need anonymity
Yeah, that was
to do
my
this
question.
subject to?
You don't. No.
So that's different.
No, you don't. So there are two, like I was saying earlier, I didn't explain it good enough. There are only two ways that I know of why you should actually use a land trust. Some people teach land trusts are good asset protection vehicles. That is a complete myth. That's not the only point I was trying to make. The only two ways I know is for anonymity if you're paying cash for something, or you're doing the subject to.
So I went to a class, Jack Shea, it was like long before I met you, and he talked about that, and I literally thought the same thing. Like your LLC, you can just look up the name. But if it's under a trust, what does it matter? The trust is nothing.
The trust is nothing from an asset protection standpoint.
That's what he was preaching.
You're talking about anonymity, though. There are a couple different ways to be anonymous. Just if you're, because I do all this, and I know all this. But if you pay cash for a property, you put it in the name of the trust immediately. You don't put it in your name and then transfer it in the name of the trust. You put it in the name of the trust. You close in the name of the trust. That, or you can go and get an LLC. Nevada, Delaware, and Wyoming, and there's actually a couple other states that are trying to pass laws now. But those are the only three states right now where if you go and get an LLC in those three states, they have non-disclosure laws in place where they do not name an individual's name as the owner of the LLC. So what that means, if you go, like right now, if you go to the Secretary of State website, in the state of Alabama, Secretary of State website, and you look up whatever LLC, you want to buy LLCs, it doesn't matter, it's going to name the owner and their address and sometimes the telephone number as well. If you get one of these LLCs in Nevada, Delaware, or Wyoming, they do not name that. They have what's called a nominee. And you can make anybody the nominee, and then you can have them resign on paper, not recorded, just on paper, and then you can become the nominee now on paper. And then you can go get an LLC in the state of Alabama. Like, just for example, if you were to go to the Secretary of State in the state of Alabama and look up one of my LLCs, like for example, Rammer Jammer Homes LLC is one of my LLCs. If you look up and see who the owner of that is, it's going to be, the owner is an LLC out of Nevada. And if you go to try to see who the owner of that LLC is, it's going to say some guy's name that you've never heard of, and in parentheses, nominee.
So why do you need such a high degree of anonymity?
You don't.
Just
It's,
for fun?
it's not for fun. You don't have to have it because essentially insurance is going to be your saving grace more so than this. It's just so.
Is that so
It's
someone
just so
doesn't
some.
come after you? Or?
It's so someone doesn't know that Brian Trippe has 75 properties.
Trying to layer it, so many layers that it
Well-
makes that trail kind of difficult. It's not impossible, but difficult to follow.
If someone were to try to sue me for tripping outside, right, of this building, fell down, whatever, broke their neck, whatever it is, and they try to sue me, I can especially if it's someone, and I'm not trying to put anybody down or anything like that, but if you're a low income individual, you don't have a lot of money, when you go to an attorney and you say, I want to sue this guy, I tripped on the stairs of his building. And they could have just scraped their knee, right? It's really to try to protect yourself from this frivolous stuff. What they're going to do is they're going to look up who owns this building, and they're going to see that it's in the name of an LLC. They're going to go to the Secretary of State's website, and they're going to look up and see who owns the LLC. And then they're going to see that it's an LLC out of Nevada, and then they're going to be like, okay, this is going to take a ton of work. You need to pay me a $10,000 retainer for me to even start to do this work. And it's just going to squash a frivolous lawsuit from the very beginning. That's why I have that stuff. So no, it's not for fun. It does. You don't have to have it. Your saving grace and something like this is going to be, for this building, I have a $5 million liability policy. Okay, that's what's going to save me way more than any kind of LLC.
But hopefully that it won't get to that.
I won't get to that. And I didn't mean to make this all about asset protection, but I'm going to have someone speak at the RIA very soon about asset protection. Okay, he's coming on board to sponsor us. Okay, so the title's going to change hands without alarming the lenders. That's extremely important. Okay, so what happens if the lender finds out? If the lender finds out that the borrower is no longer the owner of the property, they can call the entire note due. Okay, I'm trying to answer all most frequently asked questions. So the likelihood of that happening is actually next to nothing. Because what's going to end up happening, if you're making these payments on time, every single time, even if the name on the check says, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it doesn't matter. It can say anybody's name in the world. They're not looking at that stuff. It's some guy in accounting or some guy that's underneath the guy in accounting that's just taking the check and they're taking the stub. Yep, it's for that amount. Yep, it's paid. And it's getting paid. So you're not ever drawing attention to this at all. So it's the likelihood of this ever happening is like so remote. And I think, so there's a guy, and I heard this from some guy that taught this. He said he's done like dozens and dozens of these for like 30 or 40 years, and it's only happened once to him, where they even like investigated it. So just the odds of it happening are like next to nothing. So what about the taxes on the property? You're now responsible. You have now pretty much taken responsibility for this property, right? You own it. You just don't own the mortgage. You got to pay the taxes. You got to pay the insurance. The only thing with the insurance that you need to do, you can actually get a different insurance company if you'd like to. I actually did that with the property. I'm going to show you the example that I've done. I've gotten a different insurance, and I just contact through. Now, actually, I forgot about this slide. So there are a lot of documents that you need to do, and Jeff has all these. Jeff Palmer, the attorney, has all these. So definitely, if you're going to do one of these, use him. One of the documents that you're going to use is the power of attorney documents. You're going to have limited power of attorney over this property, which means you can discuss this property with the lender. And they're not going to ask any questions. You're just an additional person on the account that can discuss this property. And so what's going to happen is you're going to call the lender and say, hey, I'm going to change insurance companies. We're going to change to X. And you have power of attorney to do that. So the only thing you really have to do, if you can't just do nothing, you do have to, if you're going to put a tenant in there, you do need to change it to a renter's policy. And it's going to cost you a little bit more. The insurance is going to cost you a little bit more, but the insurance is not going to be any good if, say, there's a fire and there's a tenant in there and the insurance company didn't know about it and they just had a homeowner's policy, they may not cover it. So
wasn't that trigger the mortgage company to change the insurance?
No, because like I said earlier, you are going to have a limited power of attorney document that has your name or your company's name. Like the way I did it, I put it in Trippe Properties LLC is a property management company. It doesn't hold any property, it's just a property management company. So I'm just saying that Trippe Properties is managing this property. I'm the managing agent. And you could just say your name or your LLC is now the property manager for this property.
Okay, so you've got property, the deed is in the trust name, not in your name.
Correct.
So the property taxes bill from Jefferson County
Are in the trust's name and they come to whatever address you put.
Okay, all right. That because I'm thinking because a lot of times that's built into the mortgage, the property tax, but that would change.
Right. It wouldn't change. It's not going to change the fact that that if it is escrowed in, you just need to make sure that the address. You're just going to have to make sure that the lender has that address. The address is the lender's address for the tax purposes, so they get that tax bill. and they continue to get that tax bill, so they can take it out of escrow.
Okay, because I was thinking, these are little things that, I wonder if they trigger.
No, they're not gonna trigger it because you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
All that happened here was you put something in a land trust. That the owner, the seller, put the property into a land trust. That's all that the bank knows. They don't know anything else because unless you told them, they don't know anything else.
But like you say, you use yours under a property management company.
You can say the same thing for you. You can say if you want to name your individual name as the power of attorney, you can say manager.
Okay.
Manager of the estate.
Okay, 'cause
Manager
I
of the
was-
property. You can say whatever you want. Legally, they can't do anything to you.
Okay, I'm just making sure, because you're talking about not triggering.
Yeah. No,
anything with the
right.
finance. Because my dad picked up years ago a couple pieces of property in Winston County. Two out of three got redeemed pretty quick, but the third one he cut for 5 years. And it was a mortgage piece of property. After 7, it would have been his free and clear, regardless what the mortgage company did. But after 5, he had the deed recorded in his name. It pinged the mortgage company. They came back and they wrote him some nasty letter, and he's over there giggling all the way to the bank. No, just because they had to pay up.
Yeah.
But he said after 7, would that have changed?
Yeah, that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
I know where you're going with that. But that's not necessarily true. You still have to go through the quiet title process.
Yeah.
I'm going through it right now.
I mean, I wouldn't try to do it
Go through
to
it.
beat anybody. I'm just saying that's, okay.
Yeah. Anytime, I know this is off topic, but you're talking about like a tax property. Yeah. If you leave well enough alone and you don't try to go record deeds and quiet title and do all this stuff, if you leave well enough alone, no one's ever gonna find out anything. The only time they're gonna find out something is if you actually I am trying to quiet a title right now on a property, and it could trigger a previous owner, and they could say, hey, I was off at war. They could say any kind of, even though it's been over 6 years and it's into the 7th year, like we were talking about, there's still a lot of, you have to like advertise in the newspaper, and you have to like legitimately try to find this person for like 6 months before it can quiet the title. There's a lot more to that. Maintenance, this is typically, it can be negotiable, but you're buying the house, right? You're gonna own the house, you're responsible for maintenance. Vacancy rate, if there's a vacancy, you're responsible. Typically, it can be negotiable, but you're typically gonna be responsible because you own the house, okay? Okay, so what happens if you wanna sell it or refinance it into your personal name and do something like this? So who owns the property at this point? Who owns the property at this point?
Seller.
Who owns the property?
You do.
Who-
The buyer.
Who owns the property?
You own the property, they own the mortgage.
Right, but who, according to the tax records, who owns the property?
They did.
Okay, I've done a terrible job.
I was thinking we do because we
The
bought
bank
it.
does.
The title's in our name.
The title's not in your
No, it's in
name.
the trust name.
Here we go.
Oh,
The trust
owns
the
it.
trust owns the property.
Okay.
So you cannot sell this property because you don't own it.
Right.
The trust owns the property. According to the tax record, according to Jefferson County or whatever county, according to the county records, the trust is the owner. And the only way you can sell it is you gotta take it out of the trust. Okay? You have to take it out of the trust. You have to sell it from the trust into
Okay.
your name or your company's name. And you can don't do this unless you're do it at the closing of you, like have the attorney almost it be a double close. Have you sign it away out of the trust into your personal name or company's name, whatever, and then close on it from your company's name to the new seller. Because if you do this now it's in your name, that is going to trigger the lien sale clause. So it's the only way you can refinance it, or finance it into your name, or sell it.
I have a question.
Sure.
And if it's too early, if you're gonna cover it later, then just say so and I'll wait. So if you do all this,
I'm almost done. So probably.
if you do all this, and so let's just say you're buying a house from Mr. and Miss Smith, okay? And just what you're talking about doing. And then the Smiths, 5 years from now, or a year from now, whenever, they decide they wanna go buy another house.
Okay, so your question is can they get another mortgage if they have a mortgage already in their name?
Well, they may make enough money to do that.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm talking about the triggering thing.
No, why would it trigger anything?
Well, I don't know, that's why I'm asking you.
No, but you did bring up a good point. The point I thought you were bringing up is a good point. But no,
Your actual point.
your actual point, I don't know if I understand.
I don't know, where were we?
I'm sorry. I don't know why or how or it could, unless they are.
Went to the same bank or something, like if it was with Chase and she went back to Chase and then they got another mortgage.
But
So you
even,
just
Well,
don't-
we
but
got-
even if they did, the mortgage is still in their name, and the bank knows that the mortgage is in their
If
name.
they've got, just say, we have it in the trust, the Smiths goes to another house, we're still managing the property via the trust with the original mortgage.
Yeah.
They just make their own property technically. I mean, we're managing it. As far as the mortgage company,
It doesn't.
doesn't matter.
It's not even that deep. I don't know if I truly understand the question.
She's saying like, would the mortgage company say something like, because
What
what
do
they
they?
check?
What?
Well, I was told.
Like they're trying to get another mortgage on another house.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
they wanna
There's a-
move on.
Right. And what? What's the question?
They were sitting there telling the banker that I sold that house.
Well then.
I was told that if
Did
they
your-
go buy another house, if they apply for a mortgage and everything, that it will quickly trigger this whole thing. But we're not, what I was told, it had nothing to do with the trust. Okay, it would be, if it was in our name, that it would trigger it if the Mr. and Ms. Smith went and applied for a mortgage.
No. Ben brought up a good point about if they're saying, "Oh, we sold that house," then yes, then they're going to start to look into that. But no, otherwise they're applying for another mortgage on another house.
So,
Totally so.
so they would just have to make enough money to qualify
Correct.
for both.
Correct. But that's an important point that I forgot to put in here, because that's the question I get asked a lot by sellers, is if we do this transaction, can I go get a mortgage on another house? And I say, well, it depends on you. Your debt to income ratio, depends on your income, depends on a lot of things with you. So that is an important point.
Okay.
Could you show like that you're receiving monthly income from that property through the trust or something to show that that property's paying for
Offset.
But
itself?
they're
no
not.
income coming in.
Yeah.
There's no income coming in.
They're not.
And so thing is that they can't prove that any money's coming in.
Correct.
You're gonna have to have canceled
It's not their
checks or
taxes.
Correct.
deposits in your bank
Correct.
account.
Legally, no.
They can't show that the house is paying for itself.
Yeah,
They
and,
it's not. Well, to them, it's not.
Yeah.
yeah, and lenders are
But
not
that
gonna
is a
say,
really good
take the
point
cash thing.
that
Yes,
Ben made,
prove.
is if they go in here to this lender and say, hey, we sold that house.
My seller did that. She was like, got a phone call, said you're 2 months behind on your payment or whatever. She said, don't worry, I'm selling it next week. She said, we're closing Monday. I was like,
So anyhow,
I do want to talk about your example. I hope it worked. I don't like the way you did it. I want to talk about that. No, because I think it's important. I think it's important that we talk about it. Okay. What are the questions so far?
I don't want to be restricted, but I think that's gonna have to be.
No. I won't be a Okay.
we'll get to the test at the end though.
Okay.
Right.
Once you've taken it out of the trust name and into your name, then you can sell the property. Here are my little these are the rules that I've kind of come up with. I've gotten from other people that they're true. You really want to try to make $300 net. That's the number that seems to be a good number, because stuff's going to come up. Stuff's always going to come up with this thing. So I like to, after all the expenses are paid, taxes, insurance, everything, I want to make sure, the mortgage payment, I want to make sure between the rent and all my expenses that I'm making $300. I don't even like to cash flow these. Okay, these are risky. These things can be risky. If they go vacant, you're still responsible for a mortgage payment. They could tear something up. All sorts of different things can happen. I can't tell you what to do with your money, but I don't recommend that you spend it. I recommend that you just pretend it's not even there and just put it in the account and just cash flow this thing, pay down the balance, and then see where you are in 5 years. And this is it's a long-term play. It's a long-term, type of transaction. So here's the one that I did, which is really close to here. It's about really like a mile from here. So it's worth about $60,000. When I bought it, it's a 3-bed, 1-bath with a detached 2-car garage in the back. It was worth about $60,000, and they owed $55,000. And they had it on the market forever and ever and ever, and it wouldn't sell. So this is kind of why and how you would use something like this. It was vacant at the time, and it was in excellent condition, like pristine condition. The only thing I had to do was there was some boards that the guy had left over in the driveway that I had to end up disposing of, like some wood. And it was clean. They had it on the market. They just couldn't sell it. They had it on the market for what he owed, and he just couldn't sell it. So I think he had it on the market for like 63 or 64, just because all the fees and everything. So this is what we did. I offered him just to take over his payments. Just offered to take over his payments. His payments were, or I'll get to that in a second. It cost me $882 to close on this property. And that was what my closing costs were. Okay? That's what it cost for my attorney, all the attorney's fees, the title search, and for him to create the trust documents, and for him to do the power of attorney, to do everything. It cost me $882.50 to do this. So my payment after taxes and insurance is about $500 a month, and I've had it rented for $850 ever since. I mean, literally like a month later, I had it rented. I think we closed in October or November. It'll be 3 years coming up, 2015.
So you did nothing. You didn't have to go in and.
The
No,
only
move
thing
the
I did,
boards.
I had to move I had to get that, and I swept the garage out, and I marketed and found a tenant.
So you wouldn't wanna do one of these kind of deals for house that needs a kitchen or something?
Okay, so kind of my rules to that are, I don't like to put any money into these things because they're risky, and they're just, I would have done like an option on that one instead of a subject to, but we'll get to that in a second. For something like this in pristine condition, and they just can't sell it, and the numbers work in the sense that my rent versus what my expenses are, I'm gonna cash flow a little bit, and shoot, the thing will rent. It's a really good property in a good rental area, and even though they owed about what it was worth, it was worth it for me to do this. The tenant's been paying the note every single time. The only thing I've had to do to this thing in almost 3 years is they busted out a window that I had to replace, and that I charged them for. I haven't done anything to this. It has a brand new metal roof on it, had a brand new HVAC system. It was brand new carpet, brand new painted on the exterior and interior. I mean, I didn't have to do anything, and I won't have to do anything to it. It was just in such great condition.
So did you assume the note?
I bought the house subject to the existing financing. I took over
So
his
you were
payments.
like owner finance. It almost sounds to me like this is kind of similar to owner finance.
Similar, except the bank's financing. It's
Yeah.
bank.
Because it's still in
not
there.
the owner, it's the bank.
The mortgage is still in the owner's name.
Because I'm new at this, so I'm still
Yeah.
trying to learn.
Yeah, so it's exactly what we've been going over this whole time.
Okay.
It's it's in the note. The mortgage is
It's
in
still
their
in their
name.
name.
The property is owned by the trust. The
Okay.
whatever, the 945 Mile Road Land Trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this situation, would you be able to get property management because you now own
The land,
title?
the land trust owns the property, and I can show documentation that that I'm the trustee of the land trust.
Not like a subject, not like a lease option where you can't because you can't show that you
That
own
depends on
title.
the property manager. Yes. Yes.
What happens if the seller dies?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
So when you do subject to, make sure they're in good health.
Yeah.
As
Well,
for
the
medical
mortgage-
Take
records.
that run over my training.
Keep a good life insurance policy
I
on it.
think that this is what I think. I'm not an attorney, but people die all the time with mortgages.
Mortgage doesn't.
Would it
go
get
The
away.
mortgage
probate?
doesn't stop. The payments don't stop. The children or whoever is
You
the
don't tell them,
heirs
they didn't know you
are
had
still
it.
making the mortgage
I just didn't know
payment.
if it get caught up in probate.
That's what I
There's
was
a whole lot of
thinking,
problems
too.
going
Why would
on.
it get caught up in probate? They don't own it.
My
Well,
contract said
that the
that
banks might want that note due.
Because someone dies? I don't think that that's legal precedent.
I'm just thinking about the mess, errors and all that. I just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
It does sound messy, but.
Yeah.
Did you pay it off? You got it.
I've never heard of that before.
my contract addresses that is there's the seller and the heirs of the seller. So if they do pass away, The contract's still full force in effect.
And maybe my contract says that Jeff has, I mean, if it's,
That's a good
maybe it
point, needs to
addresses
be
it,
addressed, yeah.
maybe it already addresses it, and I just don't, I'm not an attorney. So, this is kinda funny, my return on investment on this property is 35%. Cause it's divided by what you're in it for, right? And I'm cash flowing $350 a month. So,